Hello everyone, and welcome to this Touch Designer tutorial in which I will show you how you can create this three-dimensional trail effect using the T3D operators. Since this is one of the very first tutorials using T3D, I will explain some general concepts about T3D or 3D textures. Before we get started, let's talk about the effect we're doing here, and let's talk about it in 2 dimensions, because I think once we understood that, it's easier to kind of abstract the whole idea to 3 dimensions. So I will quickly sketch this short network using a circle operator as a starting point, and I will increase the resolution. I will set the pixel format to 32-bit mono because we will need only one channel and I need high fidelity in the pixel values. I will make this circle a whole lot smaller, and I only want to see the border as white. I don't want to have the interior, so I will just set some border circle here. So this is our starting point, and basically all we do is we transform our circle around. So I will use a transform top and a noise chop with Tx and Ty. I will set this to time slice, so I have a little animated value going on here. And I will drop this on my translate X and Y. I want to increase the period so it doesn't move all that fast, and I will also decrease the amplitude so it doesn't leave the texture or the image all too often. So this is the general movement of my sphere now, of the circle, sorry. But what we want to do is we want to use a small feedback loop where in each iteration I kind of add together the last state of the feedback loop and the newly transformed circle. And as you can see, like, we add a lot of stuff, so it just gets extremely bright. In order to kind of compensate for this, I will introduce a small math top here that basically multiplies the last value in the feedback loop, the last frame, with the number close but below 1, such that it kind of disappears over time. I might also want to introduce a little blur here. That doesn't need to be all that strong, just to soften it out over time as well. So, whoops. So here we kind of have the 2D effect of what I'm looking for. We have a shape that is moving through space, and it kind of traces this trail behind it. This works naturally with any shape, so this could also maybe be a triangle, and it could also be rotating, but that's the general idea of what we want to do, sketched out in 2 dimensions. Now I want to take this to 3 dimensions. Before we do that, I should probably, so our approach to this is going to be using 3D textures. So we can really do the whole thing here we did in 2D textures, but with 3D textures. I think that to some people, 3D textures is still a very new concept that you might only know from the Texture 3D talk, which might give you a wrong idea of what 3D textures are, because this is also somehow connected to time and maybe a little bit limited in its usage. So I want to kind of get away from that perspective and open up the perspective a little bit. So a 2D texture is, after all, mostly a rectangle, and I can kind of look at each position in this rectangle and get a certain value. I oftentimes get red, green, blue, and alpha values, so 4 values per pixel. But I might also get just a single value, as in this example, because I used a 32-bit mono pixel format. And a 3D texture is kind of the same thing, just extended to the 3rd dimension. So the image you should have in your mind for that is basically a box like we have here. But this box is divided in each dimension. Let's just put 16 here as a visual reference. So we have all these little boxes in here that basically represent pixels, although if we talk about 3D textures, I might often say voxels. But at each of these little boxes, we have values stored for us. Most of the time, 4 values, red, green, blue, and alpha, but they also don't necessarily need to correspond to color information. They might as well correspond to any abstract information. That's all for now as to how you should maybe understand 3D textures. Let's get our hands dirty, and I will do so by first dragging in the T3D component. I have it in my palette here. You can download it on my Patreon account and then just drag and drop the downloaded talks into your Touch Designer project. It will disappear right away, but don't worry. All you need to check is that the T3D button appeared up here and that there's now a new operator family created for you. So let's do the same thing. We can use the exact same operators basically, but in 3 dimensions. So I'll create a new base, go in there, and again start out with the basic shape. So there's a T3D shape operator. I think like the closest thing to the circle, that is just the boundary of the circle, might actually be a small ring, so a torus. So because we are in 3 dimensions now, and I will make the torus very slim. And yeah, the representation of this might be hard to read for you if you're new to 3D textures, because what we are seeing here is basically a lot of small images. So each image would be about this size, or a lot of small 2D textures, and they are all slices of that bigger 3D texture. So this has, I think, yeah. So the newer Touch Design versions now support that you also make the viewer active on any 3D texture and then press D or display pixel values, and then you can hover over your texture and you will get information about the value that is stored at the respective pixel. And you will also know at what pixel you are currently at. So you will also see that there's now an X, a Y, and a Z coordinate for the pixel you're hovering above. And here you can see that I'm not sure if this is high quality streaming, so not sure if you can see those small numbers here, but you see that my Z value goes up each time I kind of move my cursor far enough to the right. And if I move my cursor up, it kind of jumps in bigger steps because I'm going through all of these slices. Okay, so long story short, this is a representation of a torus. We will look at it in 3D in a second. I will soften it a little bit such that the values are not just 0 or 1, but kind of smoothly go from 0 to 1. And I should also again set the pixel format to 32-bit mono. It's probably also enough to use 16-bit, but hey, why not? And I will increase the resolution to 128. And then in order to be able to look at this, let's first render it. Rendering a 3D texture for now in T3D will be enabled for you using the surface operator here. And it comes with a little rendering right away, and we see the ring, the torus that we created. But I actually would kind of suggest that you turn off the viewer on the T3D surface, because this is like, you don't have much control over how this is rendered. And instead, just drop down your own camera, drop down the light, and drop down the render top. And then you will get your own image. I can move the camera around. I will see the scene. I will connect an out here and display that. So we see it in the background for now. And yeah, this is a more natural representation of the torus. So I can change the thickness and I will see the rendered result right away. I personally prefer to have a black background here. So I will go to my camera and its settings parameter page, set the background colors alpha to 1. So we have a black background for now. Yeah, so we do have the circle now, kind of what corresponds to the circle in 2 dimensions. The next step was to transform this. So we can also just drop down and transform T3D. And we need some noise values to animate it. So I will drop down a noise with T, X, Y, Z and make a time slice. So this is going to be my movement. And you can see that the torus starts moving right away, and this is way too fast. So I will again increase the period and reduce the amplitude a bit. Here we go. And I will just copy and paste this because now it might also be interesting to look at rotations. So let's call these R, X, Y, and Z. I will actually set the amplitude to 180 because we're talking about rotational angles here. And yeah, that might be it for now. Maybe I want to change the speed, but I would just drop this in here. And now my torus is moving through space. That's good. I might actually want this to be rotated first and then translated. That's just up to us, I guess. You can choose. Great, so I have my circle or torus moving in space, and now comes the feedback loop. For the feedback loop, you just want to use the normal feedback top. In an older version of T3D, there was a feedback included in T3D, but that's actually just was a reference to the normal feedback loop. So feedback top, so I recommend just looking for it here. I will drop also down a null and connect these two, and also make the null the target top for the feedback. And now we can again insert the same operators. So we had an add where we added these two together. So the currently transformed torus and the last state of the feedback loop. So we already see the trail, but we also want this to disappear over time. So I will drop down the math with a value of about 0.95. Whoops, there it goes. And that's pretty much it. We can again maybe introduce a blur in here as well, so it's a little bit softer. But maybe one thing I should say about the blur is that there's an issue with the extend overlay parameter at the moment. Like, it works in general, but there is a bug in Touch Designer that is already reported and fixed in an upcoming version. So maybe if you hear this in the future, it already works for you, but you see that kind of the shape seems to disappear, like appear on the other side of my 3D texture. Never mind, you will see this is fixed in the future. It's not expecting as behaved, but that's okay. Sorry, it's not behaving as expected. Okay, so this already looks just as I wanted it to look. That's great. It's basically up to you to now make something interesting with it. I just wanted to show you how you can use a 3D texture as a color input to the T3D surface as well. So here I have a 3D texture noise. I will make it non-monochrome, so it's colored, and maybe also set its resolution to the same spatial resolution. And then I can simply connect it to the T3D surface. And there you go. The surface kind of looks at each position in space, looks into this 3D texture and gets its color from there. And I think this can already look interesting. We can naturally play around with all the noise parameters that you're used to. But I personally also find it very interesting to go to the material page of the T3D surface and use this color looker parameter to set it not to position but to normal, which will make it such that, well, it's a little bit harder to explain, but it's not that the rendering looks at the position of my surface point and then into the corresponding pixel in the 3D texture, but instead it looks at the normal at this spatial position, uses the normal as a lookup position into the T3D noise in this case. So never mind, I just think that the visual result is interesting, and I guess this is it for now. In a future video, I would like to show you how you can basically use the point cloud T3D together with any SOP geometry to transform any SOP geometry into a texture 3D, so we can put a more interesting shape than just a torus into this simulation. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm super excited to see what you do with this, and you find the download of T3D and the project file on my Patreon. Thanks a lot. Bye.